So if you've been following my channel for a while, it's no secret that I love Talisman, the fantasy board game. And in this video, I wanted to share with you a little bit of lore, a little bit of history, exploring the Black Library edition of the game. And this was pushed out in 2007, 2008, somewhere around there by Games Workshop before they handed off the license to Fantasy Flight Games. And what's interesting with this fourth edition, not the revised fourth edition, which followed, is this laid the groundwork for the Talisman that we know and love today, with the expansions and the mechanics and the various pieces and components. This was the engine. This was kind of that foundation on there. Previously, before that, 2007, Talisman had been out of print forever, for a really, really long time. And I remember enjoying the game at the time, but I didn't have my own copy. I was playing with some friends. We utilized their copy of the game. So when this was released, this was really huge. And personally, this marked my entry point into the game. It was only produced for, I believe, about 2 years. There were some plans to push out the sideboards and some of the other expansions, but at that point Games Workshop had passed off everything to Fantasy Flight Game, and we got that edition, the revised edition, and now being republished again. That's kind of the thrust. I have 3 copies of Talisman. Is that enough? The 3 copies that I have are the 2007 edition, and if I'm just looking to play base Talisman, just the game experience as it is with the core board on there and the core characters, this is the version that I grab and play. If I move into the expanded version, the 4th edition revised, I have 2 sets of those. One is the core itself. For some reason, if we want to play core 4E, we do that. If I'm introducing new players to the game, that's the version that I like to use because there's a couple of differences, a couple of fundamental tweaks, which we're going to explore, this versus the 4th edition revised. And I also have a complete 4th edition revised, as of now, all of the expansions. The small packs, the big packs, some of the promo stuff on there. I would say most of the time that is how I enjoy and play the game, because I love all the options, I love the characters, I love the narrative, I love the chance to explore. But if we're going core, and if we're going to look back in time, let's take a look at the 4th edition release of it on here. The first change was, in terms of the components, the upgrade at the time. This was one of the first games that introduced kind of a gold coin, plastic coin, but makes a nice sound. It's got some heft to it. I didn't really see something like that in a lot of games. To have literally a bag of gold to play and draw from, especially in a game, in Talisman, under every stone and every hill, there's like 2 bags of gold or a bag of gold. That was kind of neat, as opposed to using just a counter or some sort of cardboard token to represent it. The life, craft, and strength tokens were different. They're these little punch outs made out of plastic with 1, 2, or 3 on them, versus the 4th edition revised, which uses the cones. I have to say this was kind of neat in the beginning, because you would have your base abilities, and then from there put these next to it. So if your starting craft was 4, you'd put a 2 next to your character card on the craft slots, 4 plus 2. It made the mechanics easy to track, but pulling out, I started to paint a few of them years and years ago, mainly the life counters. But the craft and strength, it's a little bit hard to see. The stacking cones that are in the current edition, absolutely fantastic revision, totally the way to go. The dice, these are also standard now, to have the Talisman on the 1. That was kind of cool at the time also. To have a custom set of dice for a board game, usually don't see that. Usually the dice are kind of the cheapest component in the game, or you got to pay for extra upgraded dice. An example would be of even current games. We're looking at, this is 2007, 2008 tech here, something like Zombicide Invader. And I love Zombicide Invader, It's got generic D6s. You want the custom dice, you got to pay in on the Kickstarter or go to the secondary markets. So at the time, to open this box and have the custom dice, nice looking dice, and the symbols on them, that was kind of cool. You know, that was really, really cool. The board itself is the same footprint, but the spaces are a little bit bigger. And the colors slightly, a little bit brighter. But the bigger spaces I enjoy because the adventure cards themselves stack very nicely on them. And this is one of the biggest changes going from 4th edition core to 4th edition revised. The adventure cards, that's a good draw right there, Rune Sword. If this was turn 1 and I drew the Rune Sword, that is amazing. They fit really nice on there. They fit and really present the board. But you can see the adventure cards, they're all the familiar ones that we know and love. I'm going to try and not give too many spoilers here. But the size is big. They're bigger. I think it presents a little bit more. I wish the cards were bigger in the revised 4th edition, but they work. The cards themselves, there are a couple of slight changes that change the flavor of the game. And the biggest change, the Raiders. We'll pull that down there. A band of raiders attacks you and steals all of your gold coins and objects. They immediately stash them at the oasis. So they're going to, wherever you are, they're going to put you up here on the oasis. That was, or actually here, the oasis, the board is flipped. That was huge. Getting hit with the raiders in 4th edition was massive. You would literally sit here playing the game sometimes and think to yourself, if you've been through the game a few times, the adventure cards, think to yourself, okay, it's mid-game. It's mid-game. I've got some good craft. I've got some good life. 3 or 4 of that craft or strength, if I'm a strength character, is magical objects. I've got a nice pouch full of gold, so this way when I move to make my run for the Crown of Command, I can heal up. But the raiders are still on that deck. They're somewhere. The deck's like this big at that point. And you're like, I can't get hit with the raiders, so I don't want to draw any cards. Or likewise, the Tactica at the beginning of the game, someone draws the raiders, although if I drew the Rune Sword and then drew the raiders, I'd be pretty upset. But the beginning of the game, when you really don't have much, someone draws the raiders and you're like, hey, that's okay. We got it out of the way. It's done. So there's a couple of slight differences in the mechanics on the cards that are a lot more brutal, a lot less forgiving. But for the most part, if you've played 4th edition revised, these cards would be very, very familiar. There were no expansions for this game. Again, it never came to fruition. Games Workshop passed it off. Fantasy Flight revised it and went in that direction. But there were 2 promo cards that I've been trying to obtain forever, but they've been through the Black Library. Very hard to do. The promo cards are now standard. The promo cards for this are now standard in the revised edition. They were the Arena, and it was either the Trainer or I think the Doppelganger on there. So those 2 cards are missing from this set. Spells are a little bit different. And again, the spell cards, they're going to be the familiar spells on there, but bigger cards, nice. I do find the format, the presentation of the game a little bit better. But spells, there's some crazy stuff in here. Temporal Warp. Again, subtle changes. If we read that, you cast that spell. You cast the spell on your turn before you roll the die for your move. When cast, it permits you to take 3 turns instead of 1. 3 turns? That's insane. That's been toned down to 1. That's insane, 3 turns. We've talked about Tactica in Talisman and how missing a turn is huge. The narrative looks great, and I love the presentation, and I love the competition. I love the strategy, but essentially we're racing for the Crown of Command. That's just a given on there. So you miss a turn. You miss another turn. Over the course of a game, you miss 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 turns. That adds up. That's huge. You start to pull behind. So essentially by playing this card, you are forcing everyone else to potentially lose 3 turns by going there. This card definitely needed to be toned down. Some of the spell cards were a little bit overpowered. Let's look at the standees for a second. Now, a lot of the games I had been playing back in 2007, 2008, and of course, being a miniature wargamer, I love miniatures. Games at the time, I still play Runebound very, very heavily, but Runebound second edition was out at the time. Playing that with the plastic figures. Fantasy Play put out Descent first edition in the giant coffin box. That was massive. I remember picking up Descent first edition and just being like, wow, miniatures, miniatures, miniatures. And I know some of the previous older editions of Talisman that had been out of print, being Games Workshop, they had miniatures. So getting these standees, the cardboard standees, at first I was like, I really wish they were miniatures on there. I wish they were the miniatures. But I have to say, so that's saying I'm a big fan of miniatures, especially if they're painted. But I have to say that the quality of the standees are fantastic. And in terms of presentation, I actually prefer these. Not only because, in essence, they're pre-painted in the vibrant colors, but because when they're on the board at various locations, you can see where they are. You can see wherever you are on the table, where the figures are, what they're doing, and easily, Druid, Toad, Warrior, Troll, Monk, whatever's on there. With the current edition of Talisman, the figures are cool, but they're a little bit tiny, or they're average size for board games. And it's easy, especially if you're playing a bigger game, to kind of lose sight of where everyone is, potentially on there. I think this was an interesting way to go. I think if the standees were a little bit smaller, then it really wouldn't have worked out as well. But a really good size. The character cards. So this was something in the revised 4th edition. I think it was done a little bit better. They're tiny. They're really, really tiny. So I've got strength 2. If I got an object that gave me strength and leveled up, I'd put that there to track. We've got the gold, so that's going to go there. You've got your objects, your followers, so the familiar slots are all there. But what's interesting is there's no value for life. All the characters in the game start with 4 life, so I'd have to get a 4 token on there. Starting out with 4 life, really, it changes things in the revised edition, primarily the Troll, because the Troll in this edition, stock 4, yes, he has tremendous starting strength. He's got 6 starting strength, so naturally you're going to play that strength way. But 4 life kind of balances that. In the revised edition, some of the monster character classes that start with a lot more strength base, they have higher life values on there. That gives them a double advantage. It's kind of interesting to see the internal balance, especially with the special abilities, which are about the same on there. Everyone's starting out 4 life. Completely leveled playing field. For friends of mine that when we bring this version out to play, that's one of the biggest adjustments for them. They're like, wait, everyone starts with 4 life. It's not kind of different life depending on the character. That's really interesting. The biggest change, in my opinion, and again, this is just core. Looking at the core, this compared to revised 4th, the current edition. What's missing? What is missing on here? The box presentation too, just to kind of put that out. It's kind of got this plastic tray with felt put over it. A lot of things are still familiar with the alignment cards, the talisman, the purchase deck. No fate. No fate in the game. You want hardcore mode. Having no fate, playing with fate, and certainly you could do this in the revised edition. Playing a game without fate is huge. It changes things so much in that you have to own the decision that you make. So if you go into the city here and you visit her, we're going to do this right now. Here, I really don't want to get toadified. I'm going to visit the Enchantress. 3. That's what you own right on there. So I lose a craft. That's done. There's no fate on that with how that works. Certain items, if you're going to roll for, there's no change in fate. You move it to the inner realm there when you're making the run for the Crown of Command. You got to be ready. You're not going to be able to fate the werewolf stand or fate yourself through the portal on there. Tactically, that means this idea of controlling the random or embracing the random, being able to control the dice, massive, massive, massive. It also, ironically, makes some of the spell cards even more powerful, like random. Getting hit with the random, throwing the random on someone in this edition is huge, because if you force the random on someone, that's where you roll, and if they roll a 1, they get turned into a toad. That's huge. They make it into the Valley of Fire, and you hit them with the toad, they're in trouble on there. That is huge. They can't fate it. They can't change it. Dark Fate on there, that's kind of with the Fae on the woodlands. That takes it into another realm. But not having fate, and I kind of prefer it a little bit, honestly, on there. Not having fate changes things. This piece here, I have no idea where this came from. I don't. If someone out there who's a massive Talisman collector, where this came from, I don't know. Maybe it was part of a conversion kit. I never bought the conversion kit. It certainly didn't come with this edition of the game, but I think it fits it perfectly. I mean, it is the Crown of Command. When we play this version on here, you put the crown up there, and then if you claim it, you either got to put it on your head, that's if we're not totally drunk yet, or you got to kind of dance around and do the victory dance with the crown. It's kind of neat. I picked it up somewhere, and it was for Talisman. Maybe it was part of the 4E Revised promo. I don't know. I should have written it down. I would love to know where that crown piece came from. Maybe someone can throw a little bit of lore my way with it. But an interesting look at the game, and how this was the foundation for the current edition that we know and love. But this version was a lot more challenging, was a lot more cutthroat, and a lot more deadly. Perhaps that's how the game should be from there. More to come.